Whenever we think about a place, being haunted or strange things happening at a home or a specific place, right? We often attribute that to ghosts or spirits, right? But what a lot of people don't understand is that the paranormal encompasses a large genre of things, okay? That it's not always a ghost or a spirit, as Zach Baggins would have you believe, okay? Or evil spirit, as he would say, right? It's not always that. There are other paranormal entities out there that most people don't talk about. And I know it sounds crazy, but there are people in certain parts of England and Europe who openly believe that there are fairies that roam the countryside. If you go to Ireland, right, there are certain parts of Ireland where they firmly believe in leprechauns and that they live in the caves and hills of Ireland. Okay, if you go to Iceland, there is a huge belief in elves, that elves exist in the mountains of Iceland. So we think of it as being crazy and these crazy ideas that we'd see in children's stories or books or things like that. But for thousands of years, these have been legitimate beliefs of people. Like, people have accepted these as existing, and a lot of people have sworn to have seen these things. So it's interesting that a lot of times we jump to the conclusion that if weird things are happening at a home, that it's a ghost or a spirit. But a lot of these things are capable of the same things that a ghost would do, tricksters, if you will. Now, I had an interesting case, and this one, to this day, still kind of sticks with me, still bothers me, okay? So there was this woman here in town who lived on the outskirts of the city, and she lived in this secluded area that was surrounded by woods. Now, she had been in this home 51 years, lived there with her husband, and then lived there after he had passed, right? And she had no issues, no problem whatsoever living in this remote, secluded area. Okay? But then one day, she started being tormented by something very eerie. And on a nightly basis, there was something that would come and knock on her door, knock on her windows, would make strange sounds outside the home, would be laughing outside the home. She never seen this thing, whatever it was, but it would torment her every night and play with her and play tricks on her and bother her throughout the night. And so she had told her son about this, who grew very concerned about what was happening, and he thought that there might be an intruder trying to break into the home. So he decided he was going to, set up sort of a surveillance outside the home and wait for this guy to come, or this thing to come, and catch him in the act and figure out what the hell was going on, give him a piece of his mind. So him and his son go to his mother's house, and they set up a deer stand outside the home in the woods next to the house, and they're watching the house the whole night. Yet they don't see anything, right? Nothing shows up. Yet the next morning, when he goes into his mom's house, she said, "Did you see the guy, or the person? He was banging on the door and making noises and stuff." And he said, "No, we were outside the house. We didn't see anything." So this kept happening, and the son decided to call law enforcement. And the law enforcement went out and started watching the home and doing stakeouts and kind of keeping an eye on the house. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find any evidence that a person had been there. And they started to think that maybe the woman was hallucinating or declining in health at an older age, right? And the son started to think that a little bit. But then he had set up a security surveillance camera on the front door and around the home. And he caught this very odd picture, which I actually have, that he sent to me. So here's the picture of this strange thing that doesn't even really look human. And when he seen this picture, he knew that his mom was seeing something, but he knew that there was something very odd about this. So he was referred from a friend to me and figured maybe this might be something out of the conventional way of thinking, and that perhaps this might be interested to someone else in the paranormal field, right? So he contacts me and he tells me what's going on, and he shows me the picture. And it was just very strange because I had never really seen anything quite like this before. And so we go out to the house and we kind of searched around the home. We was looking for footprints, looking for pieces of clothing, anything that could suggest that maybe this was something of a human nature. We couldn't find anything. We couldn't even find any evidence that there had been anything running around the property. There was no footprints. There was just nothing to suggest that anything had even been there. So we decided we was going to do a sort of nighttime stakeout ourselves and kind of just, check the area out, see if we had anything happen. So we went out into the woods and we're walking around this property, and we got flashlights and whatnot. And all of a sudden, as I was walking and there was another guy behind me, we hear like footsteps, like little footsteps. They didn't sound like big, something big. It sounded like tiny little footsteps scurrying through the woods. And it was just very odd. And then we heard it again, kind of scurrying through the woods. And then, after we heard sort of the scurrying sound, we hear a strange, ha 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 ha, kind of laugh. And it was almost just very, high-pitched, very, menacing laugh. And then we heard it one more time, but it was off in the distance. And after that, we didn't find any more things that happened that night. And, it was just very odd because we'd heard the laugh, we'd heard sort of the scurrying of something small. So I started doing some research, and I thought, I wonder if this is possibly something like a troll or a gnome, that people identify, or an elf or fairy, right? And so I started thinking the lines of that maybe perhaps this was something like a gnome that this woman was experiencing, and it was sort of tormenting her on a nightly basis, because these things are known to be tricksters, are known to play jokes on people and take items or mess with them or laugh. And it seemed very odd because this thing seemed very small, if that's what we encountered that night. It seemed very tiny. Looking at the face, right, it doesn't look very human, but if you get kind of an idea of what a gnome looks like, right, and you see that picture, you start thinking, okay, maybe this is something supernatural, some sort of lore, right? And, the Native Americans in the area had a lot of names for things like this, but they called them water spirits. They called them, the spirits, nature spirits. And could these have been sort of these supernatural entities we know as gnomes or elves or fairies? But it was just very odd. And shortly after we had investigated this case, it just stopped. It never happened anymore. And the lady lived there, and she never had any issues after that. But it was just like for a short period of time, whatever this was, it just wanted to sort of play tricks on this, mess with this lady. And I don't exactly know why. And to this day, you know, I do believe that a lot of cases that we think of as cases of ghosts or spirits, could it be potentially something like a gnome or an elf or these other supernatural entities that